Have you ever wondered why, even when you love with honesty, when you give with full presence, you still leave a relationship feeling empty, as if something inside you was quietly taken away? Carl Jung once said, "The shadow we refuse to face will return through the people we meet." And that is why empaths often become an unwanted mirror, forcing others to see the emptiness they keep inside. When an empath walks into the room, their sensitivity exposes what many people who pretend to love don't want to admit: their lack, their dryness, their quiet insecurity. Instead of feeling grateful for the light, they feel threatened. The empath's glow makes them see the shadow they are desperate to hide. And from there, envy begins. Not jealousy, the fear of losing, but envy, the desire to destroy. It not only notices your light, it longs to extinguish it. A cold stare when you are happy. A compliment that cuts like irony when you succeed. A casual remark, "You're just too sensitive." These are not random moments. They are fragments of envy, disguised under the thin veil of false affection. You may sit in a relationship that looks like love, but each passing day, you feel smaller, dimmer, and start believing that your sensitivity is a flaw. But the truth is not that. The problem is not in your light, it lives in their shadow. And this is why empaths always awaken envy in those who pretend to love them. This video will walk you into that unconscious mechanism, so you can see clearly what is real love and what is nothing but a banquet of ashes dressed up as devotion. Look closely at daily life, and you will see envy is not some distant thing. It can begin in the smallest details. You share a success you worked so hard for, and instead of congratulations, the reply comes, "Just lucky." You speak of a simple joy, a quiet moment of peace in your day, but they fall silent, change the subject, or drop a line that stings. That sounds childish. Sometimes, even when they appear gentle, you sense something inauthentic. You leave the conversation feeling reduced, as if a part of you has been quietly erased. That is the familiar symptom of a relationship when envy starts seeping in. For an empath, the pain is magnified because you catch every nuance, every crack between the words. You don't just hear the sentence, you feel the energy riding along with it. And when that energy carries envy, you cannot ignore it. No matter how much you try to convince yourself that you are just overthinking. In love, this becomes even heavier. An empath gives with a whole heart, longing for real connection. But when facing someone who only pretends to love, they soon discover the care they receive is just a shell. There are smiles, there are compliments, but the soul remains starved. You can leave a date outwardly cheerful, but inside you feel drained, as if you just survived an invisible battle. What makes this situation more dangerous is that empaths often fail to see the root. Instead of recognizing envy in the other, they turn the arrow inward. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much. But Carl Jung once warned, when you dismiss the deep signals within you, you abandon your very soul. The hollow feeling you carry is not because you are too much. It is a signal that you are being placed inside a false environment, where love is nothing but a mask covering envy. The problem is not only one unhealthy relationship. The problem is the cycle. Because empaths are accustomed to tuning in, they often attract people who carry envy but disguise it with sweetness. And if you don't see it, you will keep sitting at that table, eating ashes, and with every bite you lose more trust in your own gift. Identifying the problem is the first step, because only when you dare to call envy by its name can you stop blaming your sensitivity. And in that moment, you begin to see clearly what is true love and what is only pretense. In psychology, we often confuse envy with jealousy, but Jung drew a clear line. Jealousy is the fear of losing what you already have. Envy is the pain of seeing in others what you yourself lack. Jealousy clings, envy destroys. And this is why empaths become targets, because their light exposes the absence inside others. Picture this. You share your joy with someone, and they frown without meaning to. They are not angry because you stole something. They are unsettled because your presence reminds them of their emptiness. Your light shines on the corner they tried to bury, and instead of facing it, they throw the discomfort back at you. Jung called this projection, the act of placing what one cannot accept in themselves onto another. For empaths, this projection is almost inevitable. Because you are sensitive, you stay connected to authentic feelings, something many people lost long ago. They see in you the sincerity they don't dare live, the vulnerability they denied, the intuition they silenced. So they label you, you're too sensitive, you're weak. In truth, they are not describing you. They are describing the parts of themselves they cannot accept. Here, the archetype Jung described emerges, the wounded healer, the one who heals from the very wound they carry. Many empaths grew up in unsafe, misunderstood environments. To survive, they learned to watch closely, to read the subtlest shifts, to tend to the emotions of others before their own. Out of that wound came the gift, the profound capacity to feel. But the paradox is this: that same gift makes them mirrors of the shadow for those not ready to face it. This explains why empaths often fall into double-edged relationships. On one side, sweet gestures. On the other hand, small needles pierce self-worth. A hug laced with coldness. A compliment carrying a trace of mockery. This is not moodiness. This is envy in motion, drawn to your light yet wishing to extinguish it. And the tragedy is that many empaths fail to see it. They think, maybe I really am wrong. Maybe I should change. But the truth is, the problem never lived in their gift. It lived in the shadow of their light made visible. When you understand this chain, how envy differs from jealousy, how projection works, and how the wounded healer archetype operates, you begin to see the whole picture. You see why empaths are both sought after and hurt. And you finally understand that your light is not a mistake. It is the truth others cannot bear. Envy never walks in with noise. It comes like a draft slipping through a door, barely noticed but sharp enough to make you shiver. For the empath, it is felt instantly, in the eyes that don't match the smile, in the compliment with a hidden needle, in the silence that makes your chest tighten. Jung once reminded us, what is rejected in the dark returns to rule us. And envy is exactly that. The way someone who cannot face their own insecurity unconsciously unloads it onto you. The one who makes their emptiness visible. This loop is so familiar that many empaths start thinking it is normal. At first, your sensitivity feels like cool water, soothing, refreshing. But the closer they get, the more unsettled they feel, because that same sensitivity exposes their inner dryness. So they pull back, they diminish, they wound you, sometimes gently, sometimes sharply, just to feel safer inside themselves. And you, out of habit, stay. You believe that if you love more, if you are more patient, things will finally change. But each time, you leave with a heart more exhausted, as if you had just eaten another plate of ashes. Here lies the hardest truth. An empath will always be a mirror. Your light doesn't just please, it reflects the parts others wish to deny. and you cannot dim that light to make them comfortable, because your very existence awakens their envy. Unless you learn to recognize this mechanism, you will keep taking a seat at false banquets, losing a little more faith in your true gift each time. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, the human urge to return to familiar situations, hoping this time will be different. But in reality, the loop only tightens, and empaths, if they don't awaken, will keep falling into the same script. Sweetness on the surface, but underneath, envy and emptiness. And there is something you must remember. Envy doesn't only wound you, it eats away at the one who carries it. But you cannot save them by sacrificing yourself. You cannot turn envy into love simply by staying longer. Here's the hook. If you stay too long, you will start to believe ashes are real food. That is when the loop hardens into fate. But if you remain until the end of this video, you will discover how to walk away from that banquet, something most empaths never dare to do. Imagine you are invited to a lavish banquet. The table is dressed in immaculate linen, crystal glasses catch the light, and candles flicker in slow ceremony. Music and laughter swell around you. Everything signals warmth, abundance, and belonging. You sit down believing you will be nourished, believing this is the intimacy you have waited for. But when the dishes arrive, before you lies only cold ashes. Others lift their glasses, laugh, and pretend to enjoy. You hold the spoon and feel your throat grow dry. This is the empath's experience with those who only pretend to love. On the surface, you receive praise, sweet gestures, and promises that sound sincere. Inside, you leave hollow, ravenous, as if your soul has been passed by untouched. You tell yourself, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much, but the truth is not in you. That table never had real food. It was set to conceal an absence. In everyday life, the banquet of ashes appears in many guises. It is conversation rich in florid words, but poor in listening. It is an embrace that chills instead of warms. It is the moments you pour your heart out while the other nods and looks away. Everything looks like love, yet you depart exhausted. The danger for empaths is habituation. You grow used to swallowing ashes. You learn to be grateful simply because someone is present. But that habit disconnects you from yourself. Each plate of ashes you consume cements the belief, I don't deserve anything better. Carl Jung warned that false love is one of the most dangerous forms of the shadow. It is not direct hatred. It is bondage within illusion. You think you are loved, but in truth, you serve another's insecure self. Envy is the slow fire that turns every meal to ash, no matter how splendid the table appears. The banquet metaphor gives a clear lesson. Not everything laid before you is nourishment. Not every smile that touches your face intends to feed you. And if you linger too long, you forget the taste of what is real. But there is a choice. You can stand. You can walk away from that table. You can seek another place, perhaps quieter, less dazzling, where the food is genuine and care is not performed. When you choose that, you tell yourself plainly, I was not born to live on ashes. If you are an empath, chances are you've sat at that banquet of ashes without even realizing it. You stayed in relationships where every compliment felt like a needle, where every story you shared was met with silence, where every small joy was dismissed as childish. You left the gathering with a smile on your face, but once the door closed, you felt a hollowness inside so suffocating it made your chest ache. Many empaths become so used to this that they mistake it for normal. They whisper to themselves that everyone goes through it, that maybe they just need to toughen up. So they begin to adjust. They speak less. They feel less. They hide their intuition. They shrink in the hope that if they are smaller, they will no longer disturb anyone. But in doing so, they lose the brightest part of themselves. Jung once said, "To deny your true nature for love is to sell your soul." That is the price many empaths have been paying. Look in the mirror for a moment. How many times have you ignored that knot in your stomach just to avoid being called too sensitive? How many times have you let someone dim your light just to keep the peace? How many times have you swallowed ashes and convinced yourself it was love? This mirror is not easy to face because it shows the truth, that by staying too long, you become complicit in your own pain. If the ignored child within you remains unhealed, you will keep searching for the same familiar banquet. You will choose people who give just enough attention to hold you, but never enough to feed you. And the result is that you grow older with a deeper emptiness and a heavier belief that real love does not exist. But the mirror is not here only to hurt you. It offers another path. It shows that you can rise, that you can choose again, that you can leave the banquet of ashes and walk toward a place where your light is not a problem, but a gift. That is not selfishness. It is the first step toward healing. All your life, you may have heard the same phrase, "You're too sensitive." It was spoken like a verdict, as if sensitivity were a flaw. Slowly, you began to believe you had to be less, harder, quieter, so you wouldn't disturb anyone. But that is not the truth. That is the language envy placed on you. Jung once said, "We do not become ourselves by denying, but only by accepting both the light and the shadow within." Your sensitivity is not a burden. It is part of your light. Reframing means changing the language you use to speak about yourself. Instead of repeating what envy has planted, you start rewriting the story. Instead of saying, "I'm too sensitive," try saying, "I can feel deeply." Instead of thinking, "I'm being used," say, "I need boundaries to protect my energy." Instead of believing, "I only deserve a seat at the banquet of ashes," acknowledge, "I have the right to seek the place that truly nourishes my soul." This new language does more than shift how you see yourself. It changes the way you walk into relationships. Picture this. You are no longer the victim of envy. You are the bearer of light. That light may unsettle others. It may expose the shadow they don't want to face. But that is not your fault. That is your strength. And when you know this, you stop sitting still while being drained. You know when to stand up, when to step out, when to guard your flame. Here's the warning. If you don't change the language, you will keep living in the script that envy wrote for you. You will eat ashes and call it love. You will take mockery and call it care. And one day, you won't even know the difference between false affection and truth. But if you start reframing, if you dare to voice new words, you rewrite your fate. And that is something most empaths were never taught how to do. Reframing does not mean erasing the past. You still have the right to admit you were envied, that you were falsely loved, that you sat at tables where only ashes were served. But instead of ending the sentence there, you add another, "And from today, I choose differently." That is the pivot. That is the moment you reclaim the voice buried for too long. Jung called this journey individuation, becoming yourself. For the empath, it is not about abandoning sensitivity. It is about learning to stand tall within it. You don't need to become someone else to be loved. You only need to love yourself enough not to sit at false banquets again. Theory only matters when you turn it into action. And to leave the banquet of ashes, an empath does not need to change their whole life at once. You only need to begin with small steps, enough to declare, "My light deserves protection." Step 1. Name the feeling. When you sense mockery or belittlement, Instead of staying silent, admit to yourself, "This is envy, not my fault." The moment you name it, you separate yourself from the unconscious game. Step 2. Record small victories. Each time you finish something, no matter how ordinary, pause and acknowledge it. Write the simple line, "I did it." This is how you nourish yourself instead of waiting for someone else to reflect you. Step 3. Set clear boundaries. When exhaustion rises, dare to say, "I need rest." Not as rebellion, but as protection of your energy. Boundaries are the fence that keeps your flame alive. Step 4. Choose the table again. Notice who are the people who truly nourish you. Spend more time with them and less in places that only serve ashes. These steps may seem small, but every time you practice them, you are sending the opposite message to envy. Your light will not be easily extinguished. If an empath keeps sitting at the banquet of ashes, the price is not just silent tears. The price is the gradual erosion of the soul. Every time you swallow mockery in silence, you reinforce the belief that your light is a problem. Every time you accept pretense instead of truth, you teach yourself that genuine love is a luxury. And slowly, you turn the gift into a curse, turning empathy into the very reason you are hurt. The greatest consequence is not found in one relationship, but in the way you see the entire world. You begin to believe you are unworthy of honesty. You start to see every love as suspicious, every care as conditional, and eventually you retreat into a shell. Yet that shell takes away your most precious gift, the ability to connect deeply, to feel life in a way few people ever can. Jung once said, "When you deny your gift, you lose the path that leads back to yourself." That is the tragedy if you do not stop. But if you begin to change, the quality you gain is inner freedom. You no longer sit at false banquets, waiting for permission to be loved. You know you can rise and choose another place. You no longer need everyone's approval to prove your existence. You become the witness to yourself, and that is enough. When an empath reframes life in this way, they do not become cold. They remain sensitive, still listening, still giving. But the difference is they choose where to give. They know their light is not meant for everyone to touch, but to illuminate only the spaces truly worthy of it. This is the state Jung called integration, when you are no longer ruled by the shadow, but live fully with both your light and your darkness. The closing philosophy is clear. You cannot erase envy from the world, but you can decide envy will not write your story. Your light may unsettle some, but it can also become the lamp that guides those brave enough to face their own shadow. And when you choose to live that way, you don't just escape the banquet of ashes. You find your true seat, the place where your light is welcomed, not envied, but honored. The truth is, being an empath has never been easy. You love sincerely, yet so often you are misunderstood. You listen deeply, yet at times you are used. You bring light, yet not everyone is ready to receive it. This does not mean you are wrong. It only means you must learn to choose where you truly belong. Carl Jung once said that only when we dare to face the shadow do we begin the path of becoming ourselves. For the empath, this lesson means one thing. Stop blaming yourself for your sensitivity. See it for what it is, a gift. A gift that must be protected and given where it is truly valued. If you recognize that you've taken a seat at too many false banquets, then perhaps today is the moment to pause and ask yourself, where do I truly deserve to be? Sometimes that single question is enough to begin change. This video is not here to make you sad. It is here to help you see yourself with more clarity. And if these words resonated with you, consider subscribing so we can continue walking this path together. Because in the next videos, We will go even deeper into how you can carry your light without paying the price for it.